Welcome to episode 17 of Arakko Public Radio for the week of December 7th. We're the Casual X-Men Chat Show where we chat everything happening in Marvel's Mutants every single week. I'm Rod, and this is the guy who only ever logged onto the dark web once, and that was to find out if he could build an actual Dragon Zord. My one and only Chameleon Mutant, Keegan. This week, we are talking about... Let me get a big... Immortal X-Men 9, X-Men Red number 9, X-Force 35, New Mutants 32, Marauders number 9, X-Treme X-Men number 1, Dark Web number 1, and going around the Marvel Universe with Captain Marvel 44 and the Family Snikt. But first, we had so much fun with Owen last week, we're bringing on a third host again. Welcome, Joe of X.
Today I am recognized by the broken land. Today I am Joe of Arakko.
You have probably been mentioned maybe
Yeah,
the
much
most
like-
of anybody.
Much like Beetlejuice, if you say my name in public 3 times, I will show up. And I listen to this when I work out, and so like I'll have this like big heavy weight, you know what I mean? Because I'm trying to do more weight, and like all of a sudden I hear my own name, and it's like such a jarring thing. Like, oh, Joe of X is gonna be mad at me, like, and I'm like, yeah, well, like, I'm like trying not to kill myself over here, guys. Give me a minute.
That's
Like,
the thing. You are very dressed up. I half expected you to be in your workout gear because I know you associate us with a workout, but you
I do.
are.
I decided to put on the fancy. I have one jacket. This is my one fancy jacket. It works once. I've given presentations, historical presentation, research presentations when I'm not talking about comic books. I'm a grad student for early American history, and I've done conferences at UPenn and Temple University here in Pennsylvania. And I'm always wearing this one jacket, and like fortunately nobody's like shown up to like the same thing I've done twice, so like they don't know that I have one outfit. Other than this, it's like X-Men shirts and like Journey shirts and shit. Like I just, like I'm a bum. But today, again, I'm of Arakko, and I decided to pull it because we have X-Men Red.
What I'm hearing though is if you ever get invited to the same conference a second year in a row, you're gonna have to go jacket shopping.
I will have to actually buy a jacket, and this one will have to fit. This is so fancy, it doesn't actually fit around my back, right? Again, the workout thing, like I bought this before I bulked up a bit.
For what it's worth, from this angle, it looks very, very flattering.
I know. I'm from my recording closet here.
Just don't turn around, I guess.
Yes, it's true.
All right, so we're gonna ask you the same 3 questions we got out of Broken Record last week. Tell us all about you, which you kind of just covered. We want to hear your X-Men journey, how you stumbled into the X-Men, and then how much of Krakoa are you actually following?
All right, well, I want to first give a shout out to Broken Record. He did such a great job. And I'm on the East Coast. You guys are on the West Coast. If you don't mind me throwing out a mild bit of location here.
We've talked about it.
It's almost 11 o'clock here at night. You had that poor boy up to 2 a.m. to talk about the X-Men, which is wild to me. It's just poor. So if you're listening, Owen, you have my utmost and dearest.
You just undersold it. We started recording 3 a.m. his time. Started at 3 a.m.
But okay, well, what was the question? How do it start? What is my origin point in the X-Men? So around 1990, I'm 38 years old. So around 1991, I was about 7 years old, and my sister had come home with this metal tin of Marvel cards, right? She's had the 1990 and the 1991, and some boy at school had given it to her, right? And she was just showing them off to me, right? And at the time, these cards were the hottest thing for kids our age, just period, full stop, right? And so we all bought them. There was card shops around it in Staten Island, New York, right? And we would buy these cards all the time, right? And we'd trade them. And to me, there was one card that really stood out, right? And if you want to look it up, I believe it was Art Adams that did the art, and who's amazing, right? But it was Archangel in the Walt Simonson, the classic Walt Simonson blue and pink like thing with this, right? And it's this gorgeous shot, and on the back it said, he was once the X-Men known as Angel until Apocalypse changed him, something like that, right? And so I, as a kid, immediately had to go find that comic, the Where He Changed, right? And I never actually found it, right? It wasn't until I was an adult that I knew that this is Fall of the Mutants, right? That's all that. But I would go into all of these old comic shops in Staten Island, and then when Long Island, where my grandparents lived, and look, and I'd pick up back issues of X Factor, right? And that happened for a long time, and then I faded out when I got a little bit older. I went to Spawn, right? And I was in Spawn for a while, and then I switched over to DC, right? Fell out of the comics, so we came back, switched over to DC, and I was a DC fan all the way until uh the end of Blackest Night, where I was just like, I've had enough. Like this is a good jumping off point. And I didn't jump back in. And as for the X-Men, like it was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, it occurred to me that I'd never actually read the Dark Phoenix saga, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna read the Dark Phoenix saga, right? And then I just decided to go back to the beginning of Claremont and then read all of Chris Claremont, right? I'm gonna go all the way back, and I don't read fast. I like an issue or two before bed, and a few issues on the weekend, right? It took me a few years, but I got there, and then I just kept going, and I read all the way to the end of the 2000s, right to the 12, which is a terrible fucking story. Like, never read the 12. There's no excuse. It's not the worst X-Men story. That is the that's Operation Zero Tolerance. A lot of people will say the Draco. Operation Zero Tolerance is the worst fucking X-Men story that's ever told. There's no excuse for a comic book to be that bad. And I'm usually like a positive guy. Like I'm like, well, it wasn't for me. Maybe it wasn't what I wanted. This just is bad structurally. It just ends. Like it's just like oh, it's this horrible thing. None of it makes any sense, and then it just stops. It's just like everyone just the bad guy bastard. They pull his funding. They're just like, yo, he ran out of money. And then his like big move is like they stole the X-Men's fucking TV. Like the X-Men come back to the mansion and they're like, where's all of our furniture? Bastion stole our furniture. Curse you! And that was like the fucking. That's it. That's the story. It's the worst fucking story. Operation Zero Tolerance. There's like a weird hobo camp. Like Wolverine is like hanging out in the hobo camp for no goddamn reason, and they turn out to be robots. Like they're like, oh, robot evil hobos. Like it's just fucking bad. Anyway, sorry, that's way off topic. But anyway, I picked up it was the X-Men Gold era, and I jumped in. X-Men Gold is awful, really also bad. But I got through that and went back Marvel Unlimited. I went back through like Wolverine and the X-Men, the Utopia era, and then I was here for when Krakoa launched, so I was reading it week by week, and it was way different, right? Because you have Hickman. He's so Kurt Vonnegut for superheroes.
Yeah.
Right? Like he big brain science fiction and also these really funny little characters, right? And he's very Kurt Vonnegut. And so like it's like, oh, this is like Slaughterhouse 5, but with mutants, right? And it's really
Absolutely.
Cool. And so I'm in it, right? Like I'm in this real deep. I bother people about it constantly as much as possible. I have a TikTok where, God bless them, less than 700 people. And I just do dramatic readings all the time and like lore videos, right? And that's what I do when I'm procrastinating at home. So
you know what though, your dramatic readings are the best. I've tried my hand at a few dramatic readings, and like as soon as I've seen you pulling them off, I backed off because I was like, there are people that do this better than me, and I have left it to the king.
There's a guy by the name of Daniel Does Voices who is earth-shatteringly good at it. But he doesn't do X-Men. He does like the Joker, and he does like Batman Joker and like Dr. Manhattan. But like I look at that guy and I'm like, I would like to be that guy. That's the man. So if you are on TikTok and you're looking for people to play with in that regard, that Daniel Does Voices is head of the class, right? Top of the game. So
all right. I did not prepare a game this week because we have 8 issues to get through. So, I'm going to give guest first pick. Do you want to start Immortal or do you want to start Red?
I'll go Immortal. It's the first one on my notes. I have an entire thing of notes here.
Written by Kieron Gillen, drawn by Lucas Werneck. Technically, this is a Kitty Pryde issue, so we see a quiet council meeting through her eyes. Storm reports on Arakko's recovery efforts, and Exodus complains about the Phoenix Foundation extending resurrections to humanity. And eventually, Hope reminds him of his own words about Jesus sharing miracles to get him to relent. Kitty starts to muse that perhaps the quiet council is finally working as it should, when Mr. Sinister walks in. Emma needles him by Dr. Stasis. Destiny warns Exodus he's about to kill Hope, so Exodus takes him out. Kitty comments this seems like a dumb plan for Sinister, and it's revealed that this was the death of Moira 6.1. A flashback reveals a meeting between Sinister and Destiny where they talk about Judgment Day and how he didn't get judged. She encourages him not to give up, and so he sets about planning his next move. He pairs two new Moira clones, 6 and 7, and reveals to Psycat and Professor Plod, his cat and turtle accomplices, that each Moira clone shows more signs of genetic decay, and he doesn't know how many more fresh save points he can make. We see Moira 6.2's version of the same events play out, again through Kitty's eyes. He uses a boom boom bomb to destroy the council chambers, but Destiny had warned them and they all evacuated. In his third life, he's jumped by Mystique as soon as he gets there. Kitty appears more and more exasperated each time. By life 4, he realizes he can't go after Destiny, and we get a quick montage. Life 4, he wears battle armor with a big gun, but Hope uses Storm's powers to fry him. Life 5, an even bigger gun, and Storm herself fries him this time. Life 6, he brings a celestial gun that shorts out and he has to kill himself. 7, he tries to snipe them from a distance, but Destiny warns them all. 8, he uses a psychic trap to pop Xavier's head, but Emma punches his head in diamond form. And in 9, he transforms himself into a hideous octopus monster, kills most of the council, but Hope escapes with Exodus and he's forced to kill himself again. This sends him back to the drawing board. And in what I consider panel of the year, he consults with Dark Beast's head floating in stasis, who threatens to kill him if he doesn't let him out, and Sinister assures him he'd be disappointed to learn he's no longer the Darkest Beast. He finally comes up with what he considers a foolproof plan, and we see one last version of the meeting. Using a cluster of Professor X brains he cloned, he managed to incapacitate all the psychics, kill Professor X and Emma in an instant, using a combination of Gambit and Harold Leland's powers. He makes a communion wafer that shoves in X's mouth, kills him, which then lets him take out Hope. He gloats, assures everyone he's not like Stasis, and flees. The council frets this is the end of Resurrection. Colossus mentions possible contingencies, and finally, Kitty announces she knows what's going on and that Sinister is going in the pit. So, when I logged on Reddit yesterday, the first comment I said called this a filler issue, and I cannot figure out how anyone could consider this filler.
Yeah, that's a wild statement because this is a setup issue, right?
Yeah.
This is the Sins of Sinister setup.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because that's next month, and we're putting it. What I thought was an odd choice, and it's really, this is my favorite X-Men book, right? Going on right now because I love the perspective issues. This is the first time I think that this mechanic has failed this book because Kitty is really incidental to this plot and doesn't need to be. If you took Kitty Pryde out of the if you took Kate out of this plot altogether, it would change nothing.
I agree with you. This is the weakest use of the individual focus aspect. I think Kate's role is gonna play into the next issue, the second Prelude issue, and I have not looked. I don't remember who next issue focuses on, but there's two Prelude issues before it's truly Sinister. It's this issue and is it 11 or is it 10? 10.
10.
It's not a coincidence that she kept getting more and more irritated each time, and then knows. So whether it's gonna be some new play on her phasing powers, let her realize the timelines were getting reset. There's more to her just suddenly knowing, like, oh, I know what's up. We're gonna pit him. You could see by the each of the clone deaths, she was more and more exasperated.
I can see that. I think I'm kind of on the stance of like her role was crucial, however her perspective was not for this issue. Like I don't think it's required to have her inner monologue, for instance, to have her go, I know what's up, and then run out the door. Like, it could have been from anyone else's perspective and achieve that same effect.
I think what's fascinating about this book, in general, not just this issue, but this issue as another highlight of it, is that Sinister's only friend on all of Krakoa is Destiny, and it is a one-way friendship. It's true, and it's great because he doesn't really view her that way. Sinister only sees Sinister, right? He's the only person who's real, and we learned that in the last issue, right? That's his perspective. I'm the only one who's real in this universe. But Destiny throws a wrench in that work because she's the only one who's able to tell him, don't do something.
Yeah.
Don't be a coward, Nathan. Is what she said at first, right? When he first in the 2 or 3, when Celine's monster is attacking, and he's like, I'm just going to shoot a Moira, and we'll do this all over again. And she said, don't be a coward. And then this time, she said something very similar to him, too. And he stops, and he goes, damn it, she's right. And she hates his guts, right? She dripping with disdain. This is what she does, right? She's the star of the era, right? Like ever since Hickman brought her back and refocused her to be this sort of sardonic character. But she does not respect him at all. She never uses the name Sinister.
Yeah.
She says Nathaniel. And that's a moment, right? Because we're in Krakoan culture. Mutant names are important. Mutant names, mutant dress. It's a key to the culture. She does not recognize Sinister as a mutant, right? She doesn't know, you are Nathaniel, right? And you're up to something, but you are useful, right? Like, I think that's a fascinating aspect of this relationship, and this book has really pushed that forward.
Absolutely.
He doesn't go to Emma or anybody else. He goes to Destiny, and he goes, what was it? Did you fail? I wasn't even judged. And Destiny, again, it's very one-sided. She's just like, I wonder if this Dr. Stasis was judged. Bye, Nathan. Fuck off. And she's off to do her own thing. I really love that. Also, Exodus is a youth counselor, and I just wanted to get that out on the air. He is a youth counselor, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's one acoustic guitar away. I mean, if they could kill you, that's what Exodus is, right?
I know that man. I know that human.
You know what I mean? Like, he has a man bun and an acoustic guitar in another world, right?
I grew up in a red county in the early 2000s. I've met many of that youth group leader.
yeah, that's Exodus for you.
Also, to the point about being judged, I do find it interesting that he's straight up just like, yeah, no, I wasn't judged.
Yeah. He wasn't. And that is an interesting story point, and it's
well, because who else was not judged at all, despite desperately wanting to be judged, is the clone of Craven. So I wonder if it has something to do with him not being the true Sinister.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the heavy implication, was that he felt like, at least, that he was not judged because he's not really alive, and that was clearly rubbing him the wrong way as he had that conversation with Destiny. So,
but that boils into, I guess we'll get into that in other books, because I think there's a question of identity that runs really strong in Dark Web and New Mutants.
I was a little surprised to have kind of that question come up here, because it is so heavily a theme in Dark Web, which we'll get to. But okay, so I don't remember if I messaged both of you or just you, Keegan, that I thought it was really neat the way this issue basically turned into a speed run of like Sinister version of Powers of X.
Right.
And that came around in a really interesting way today, because I don't know if either of you saw Kieron Gillen gave like a Sins of Sinister like pep interview, like trying to sell the crossover, and he went into really big detail about how he, Al, and Cy Spurrier all view Sins of Sinister as their personal tribute to House of X. So I thought that was an interesting that he did a quickie Sins of Sinister's Powers of X, and then apparently the whole crossover is their shared tribute to the other half of that story.
So we have a lot of Moira going on, like Moira's power, and we're really stretching Moira's power out. There's two things that are, I think, really interesting here, and that lead into that. One, it's a save point. I think it's really interesting. You only have to bring one online, and then you just get all of the information. Like you just, right, which I think is really fascinating. But the second aspect of that is that the degradation.
Yeah.
And so we can explain away the differences in the lives of Moira in House of X, Powers of 10, and the current timeline, because of the degeneration of the timeline, because Sinister is mucking things up. Right. So any deviation is now on the table, because Sinister is screwing with time.
I mean, it is an easy way to explain literally anything at this point.
Well, and I mean, we saw the setup for how they're going to clean up Sins of Sinister. That was basically the entire point of Moira 7. There is he's pre-established a save point that'll bring us right back to here after Sins of Sinister's over. So And they had to go through all the that he quick aged 6, but he didn't quick age 7, so that there's a reason why he can't use 7 right away, but eventually he'll use 7. Not to go back to us talking about how Kate wasn't really the star of the issue, but I do like that basically he ignores her the whole time. She sits at 6 and he never notes anything about her. She's basically a non-entity for all 10 lives. And yet, in the end, she's the one that figures out what he's up to and sees through it. Apparently, we don't actually know what she realizes there because that's the big cliffhanger. But I don't know. I still like that narrative, device of oh, Kate's just the bystander. Kate's just the bystander. Kate's oh shit. Kate's the one that's one step ahead of him theoretically, maybe.
Well, Kate has a meta power that exists sort of beyond the scope, and Kate's meta power was that. For about 7 years, Kitty Pryde was the main character of the X-Men.
Yep.
If you go past Dark Phoenix Saga up to the Mutant Massacre, in the 80s, one of their strongest periods, one of the most critically beloved, right? All of the best stories. That Kitty Pryde's the main character. So there's an attachment, like an audience attachment to her as a viewpoint.
I think she'll always be a bigger deal to me than the books actually make her these days, because those were some of the first, when I went to the library, I discovered it through the TV show and through some I've told this story, a hospital trip, a nurse just handed me a stack of Spider-Mans and a stack of X-Men's, and those were just random issues, but the first actual books I grabbed were all from that era where it was the later Claremonts and stuff where it was just this Kitty Pryde is the star. And so to me she'll always be a big ass deal, even though a lot of times she hasn't been for a long time.
And I mean, I feel like a lot of that is she was the main character right up until Hugh Jackman entered the picture.
Actually, yeah, I hadn't thought about it. Those were pretty close in time period. So, do we want to talk about theories on why Hope's the linchpin to Sinister's plan? Do we have any theories?
Well, she's the head of the 5.
Yeah,
right?
So he's interrupting Resurrection, and then he wants to somehow,
because that allows him to monopolize Resurrection, right? He's the other guy who can do it outside the 5. Although his process isn't perfect, we learned that. But their ability to conquer death, then they're vulnerable. You've made them vulnerable. I don't know what he's up to.
Yeah. Well, the only choice they have is to go through him, and then he just starts creating all of his chimeras.
Meanwhile,
her name is Genesis. Mrs. Apocalypse's name is Genesis.
Yeah, I knew having you on, this was gonna come up.
This poor woman has spent thousands of years leading her people in a war against the demonic horde to be known as Mrs. Apocalypse.
I think it has a nice ring to it, but
he was the unfit one. He's Mr. Genesis. She left his ass home.
Listen. The Genesis card isn't winning all my matches in Marvel Snap. It's the Apocalypse card. So,
are you an Apocalypse guy? I'm a Blue Marvel Onslaught guy. That is mine. That is how I tag people up.
I have been in bars and run into people in Apocalypse t-shirts, and that has led to us bonding. I have never met someone in a Genesis t-shirt. Just throwing it out there.
That's just poor merch.
Much later.
Written by Al Ewing, drawn by Stefano Caselli, and opens with a data page letter of Professor X talking about Gabriel Summers' resurrection and his total confidence in his ability to tame him. We already saw that confidence was, in fact, poorly placed. We see more from Arbor Magna the day they resurrected him. Havoc complaining to Scott about what a bad idea it is, and Scott reveals to his brother that it's Emma and not Jean that brings him back every time. And then Alex questions if Charles should be trusted, and X points out that while he doesn't snoop in people's minds, he can hear her just fine. Of course, then Gabriel, with all the tampering we've already seen, hatches menacingly. Story jumps back to the confrontation in the diplomatic zone. Deathbird and Vulcan have a short, tense conversation about their son, and Vulcan asserts that he is still Emperor. Nova, meanwhile, is furious the mutants would even consider reviving the Mad King. Gladiator starts to blame Professor X, but Vulcan kills him by turning his own confidence-based powers against him. Nova announces that he's arresting Vulcan, but Vulcan uses the Nova Force on him, and Frenzy attempts to call Abigail Brand. Of course, this whole thing is actually Brand's plan all along. She ignores the call while gloating to Mentalo. In the World Farm, WizKid hates being left behind on the ship, but gets approached by a couple progenitors. Meanwhile, Cable's team is fighting the sentry that approached them at the end of last issue and gets the advantage until it wakes its leaders and they take control of Fessy. God, I'm just mispronouncing everyone today, probably. Vulcan is cleaning house and approaches the throne, unleashing his flames on the Empress. Brand looks overjoyed momentarily until she realizes what's really going on and gives the second best panel of the week with her oh shit face. It wasn't Xandra on the throne, but Sunspot! We get a data page of Bobby's plan, and it's the exact opposite of Brand's meticulous planning data page from last issue. He basically just realized what was up, and while getting ready for a hot tub soak, comes up with his counter plan. Vulcan and Bobby size each other up, and Bobby convinces Vulcan his solar powers would give him the win. Vulcan decides to go get the Empress elsewhere, and Deathbird points out to Bobby that he would definitely have been toast if they actually went toe-to-toe. Bobby admits he obviously would have been the loser. Vulcan arrives at the Autumn Palace to take out the Empress, but is instead met by Storm. So that page of Vulcan sitting on the throne, that's my cell phone wallpaper now. That was such a fucking beautiful page. Storm versus Vulcan next issue.
That'll be
match
great.
of the year.
It always ends the same way. So Storm's hidden power is that she doesn't lose one-on-one fights.
Yeah.
If you stick one other person in that room, then she's vulnerable. But if she's one-on-one, it's Callisto, Tarn the Uncaring, Marrow back in the 90s. Like, whenever you, especially if you give her a knife, she's throwing lightning bolts and fucking up the Black Panther, right? She can't lose to anybody, right? So Vulcan's Vulcan's gotta learn a fucking lesson. You know what I mean? The same lesson that fucking Callisto had to learn in the sewer, right? Like, the same lesson that Tarn the Uncaring had to learn, like, every fucking time, right? So I love that panel. It's so badass, but, like, it's like, this guy...
He's screwed. Well, and it's the last issue before we head into Sins of Sinister, and the book literally gets renamed Storm and the Brotherhood. So, like, she has to be looking good right before they head into that. So
Gladiator has the power set of a white guy in a Facebook comment section.
Yeah.
He is, as long as he is confident in whatever wrong ass shit he's doing, he is unstoppable. But, like, here comes Vulcan with a Snopes article, and he is just on the ground, right?
Well, he literally looks like that meme of, like, the crinkled up, like, guy who lost.
He is. I swear, if Vulcan has any social media presence, he is like, he'll be like in his whole outfit, but he'll have like sunglasses with like a fish. Like, if he had a drinking problem, he would be a real menace, right? Like, you know what I mean? Because I've done some nonsense shit and be like, yeah, I got this. That, you should not give that man super strength, and yet here we are, fucking 50 years later into Gladiator. Just, I love him so much. He must be fucking insufferable.
Eventually.
I do want to real briefly circle back to Vulcan vs. Storm, just because back in late May or maybe it was early June, Al Ewing gave one of his first interviews about Red, and he talked about how the first time Vulcan and Storm go to head, he described it as basically a WWE promo battle, and that the full-on blood match was coming in the future. That's now, boys. We're in the future. We got the blood match finally.
Finally.
He operates in wrestling rules, right?
He does.
Vulcan really does. Because he goes on out there and Gladiator is the badass, right? Like, he's the old, you know, he's Okara, right? And if you send someone out to, like, seem like a badass, you're gonna have him beat Okara, right? Like, or, you know, or Cena or whomever, right? Like, you get to send the old badass, right? Or Tanahashi, right? If we're really going geeky New Japan pro wrestling, right? But that's Vulcan. Vulcan takes out Gladiator, and Vulcan has some amazing lines throughout the whole thing, right? And he looks so cool, and you have to set him up for Storm, right? Because you're gonna have Storm beat him, but, like, you know, she can't just be a chump, right? Like, but what was this line? I like the.
But while you find that, we can discuss him coming out of the egg and him having flames just perfectly placed over his junk. glowering, naked, hovering Vulcan.
No, I mean it's dangerous. It's a dangerous proposition either way. But I mean, I think that's part of his presence, if you will. I am excited for it though. I'm excited for this match. Jade Cargill versus Vulcan.
Oh,
I will
God.
always just call Storm Jade Cargill.
You will probably have the best answer for this, actually, Joe. But has Bobby DaCosta ever been this interesting? Because I fucking love everything Al Ewing has done with him so far.
Yes,
This
he has. He has. So there was Bobby always had a trace of this in him.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little like Kieron Gillen did with Sinister, right? It's that this always existed in Sinister, right? With the puns and everything. Bobby always had swagger, but when he was a kid, he was angry and traumatized him.
I like that the polycule is still alive. I love that they're all still fucking, and they're not dropping any of those hints anymore. Like, they have not dropped that plot line at all.
Well, they put it on the back burner a lot, and we only get little tastes of Schema these days, which is a shame because they are a really good couple, Scott and Emma. But like we got in her Immortal episode, issue.
Yeah. I was gonna say both years at the Hellfire Gala, but I think this year actually happened in the Immortal issue that was like around Hellfire. But we've gotten glimpses of it the last 2 years, but it's only been really lumped in with Hellfire.
Sexy panel where he's just coming back to life and like he's like leaning up against the thing and she hands him the visor, and I'm like, that was like, who did I think that was Lucas Werneck, right?
I think you're right.
Oh my god, that guy, just pay him whatever he wants. Just give him as much, but just
X-Force 35, written by Benjamin Percy, drawn by Chris Allen. Jailbreak. This issue opens with Beast finishing experiments on a still living prisoner and then discarding his body into space. He's interrupted by an alarm and notices the riot Solemn is leading with Blackmore. Solemn then lectures Maverick for siding with a fascist, while Beast desperately radios for him. Meanwhile, in the Healing Garden, Sage is emphatically apologizing to Domino, who seems more concerned with helping her fight the alcoholism. They get a call from Omega Red that something is happening. Beast is next seen dragging another prisoner out of a cell, who he injects with a serum and turns into a giant monster that's meant to defend him. Omega Red uses his tentacles to access the mycelium network the gates use to find Beast's secret gate and the origin of a scrambled distress call from Maverick. Domino and Red go after him while Sage stays behind. Beast offers Maverick unlimited money to stay, but the mercs leave anyways. Sage angrily tosses a bottle of booze aside. Red and Domino search for Beast while the monster and Blackmore run back through the open gate. Blackmore escapes into the night, but the monster goes for Sage, who uses her quick wits and grabs the bottle she discarded. And with a spark from Black Tom Cassidy, hits it with a giant fireball. Beast assumes Omega Red and Domino are there to help him, but they arrest him and perp walk him back through the gate. Okay. In my version of the notes, I said I liked it, and then in parentheses, Joe can gloat here.
I can. But first, I have a point that I would that there's something really. Okay, I'll gloat first. Percy's a good writer. Percy's a novelist, right? He, by his own description, right? Percy describes himself as a novelist, not more than a comic writer. So we see in how Percy works is he always works in a sort of a 3-act structure. And depending on what he's doing, he stretches that. And now, the end of this issue is the beginning, I think, of Act 3 of Beast. Or maybe we're kind of in the middle of Act 3 of Beast, but like his being arrested, right? Is the Act 3 of Beast. And again, visual clues. He's so good with his artists. He's so good with his art. He doesn't get enough credit for how succinct he is with the art and how the art tells the story that he's about to tell. If we go back to the hated issue of X Deaths and Lives of Wolverine, when Moira is about to flee to Jane Foster because she finds out she has cancer, there are 3 ravens. 2 are flying away from her and 1 are flying in the same direction. Right? Ravens are symbolic of Hunan and Munin, right? Odin's ravens that are foresight and memory, which is always what Moira had back when she had her powers. Those are flying away. The raven flying in her direction was Raven Darkholme, right? That's to represent. And who does she go see? She sees Jane Foster, the Valkyrie, the only person who in the X-Men mythos, the Valkyrie can fight off death, right? They can confront death. And that's like how Percy works with his artist. Here's brilliant. Hank McCoy, if you want to go to the very first page of this book, right, past the data pages, how is Hank McCoy dressed? Look at that. He's dressed like Dr. Frankenstein from the 1931 movie Frankenstein. And that'll tell you how this story is going to work. He has the goggles, the gloves, the coat, right? He pulls the lever, it's alive, right? McCoy has created a monster. He's created two monsters, and both of them have gotten away from him. He's created the prison, which Severin Blackmore steals, right? You get that in a pay, and that is a consequence that he has to pay, right? Like that's going to get out. His monster has gotten away from him, literally. X-Force is the other monster he's created. That is an extra legal, or it's not an extra legal, it's legal, but like they're an organization that has all of this power, and now they have turned on him, like Frankenstein's monster turns on, Dr. Frankenstein. And I think that's really a brilliant collaboration with artist and writer. And Percy's really in sync with that.
So here's where you and I are on like totally different level. My note was Blackmore turning the prison into his new ship is pretty cool, I guess. I'd read that if written by anyone else.
Oh my! Well, again, that's Frankenstein's monster. And Frankenstein's monster, if we go back to Frankenstein, because that's the cue we're getting, the very beginning of the book, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. In his dying moments, the monster returns to the creator and says, "Why did you do this?" Right? If we're looking for predictions, Severin Blackmore, it's either Severin Blackmore or Sage, and probably it might be Sage, because that would work, I think, more satisfying conclusion. But one of these monsters is going to return to Beast at the end and say, "Why did you do this all?" So yeah.
I mean, could the monster even be the feral Wolverine that he has created at this point?
Oh, another good point. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Like, his very good friend who he just kind of tortures casually and all that.
You're giving me a perspective right now that I think helps. Doesn't like fix the fact that this is still Percy's stuff is still my least favorite like thing coming out of Krakoa, but I think it's helping me understand why that is more on my taste than anything. So my only other note I had on this issue, I had two more notes, but the other one that's relevant right now was I said, because after all the positives, I said, still, there was a lot of overwritten, unearned monologues. Sage's narration is still way too soap operatic and steals some of the enjoyment for me. And I'm realizing, though, that all of your comparisons... So I was a lit major in college, and they made, you have to pick a focus, or at least in my program, I had to pick a focus, and I went late American lit because I found early American lit and British lit. I would refer to them as like pompous or full of themselves, or I used words like unearned, like what I always take from Percy's characterization of Wolverine. We've talked about it on previous episodes. I know you've called me out on it.
Oh, his Wolverine is so good. I will defend his Wolverine so much.
To me, his Wolverine is the corniest Wolverine ever because
we have to take a moment to I have to fight you on this. I have to fight you on
this. Take it away, my friend.
There is an issue. Wolverine is beautifully written by Benjamin Percy in a way that I don't think that really any writer since Claremont has gotten Wolverine. Wolverine is a man with a past and blood on his hands, right? He's got the Black Widow from the movie story kind of going on with him a little bit. Like there's red in his ledger. The thing about it is Wolverine's very tired and he wants to not have to hurt people anymore. The irony is that Krakoa is a paradise. It's a paradise for everybody, but Wolverine doesn't really buy into it. He understands that in order for this paradise to exist in the geopolitical world, that someone has to get their hands dirty, that someone has to get their hands bloody, right? he's tired of being a weapon, though, and he's been used as a weapon for 100 years, right? By governments, by agencies, by whomever, by the X-Men. He's been a weapon. He doesn't want to be a weapon anymore, but he sees paradise, and these are all people he cares about deeply. They're either children, which he's always like been fiercely protective over children, or they're like his friends and lovers and people he cares about deeply. And he knows that in order for them to have paradise, he has to give up that piece. He's not allowed that piece. So you see in stories from a few months ago when he's yelling at Krakoa, like the tree, and he attacks the tree because he's upset. This is him really conflict. He's depressed and upset that he has to give up paradise. He doesn't get paradise, so everybody else can enjoy paradise. Of what was it? Wolverine 25, I think, it was just the last month. He's depressed. He says, I did a reading of it on TikTok, by the way. Joe of X on TikTok. But gotta get the plug in. So he goes, you know, when I'm fighting, I'm just lost. I'm just a machine. I'm a hammer made of blood and bone and adamantium. But every once in a while, and you see like a butterfly flying past him, and he just gets distracted. And he goes, every once in a while, something snaps me out of it, and I realize that things keep going and everything. You know, while we're doing all this crazy stuff, like butterflies need pollen, bakers are still baking, kneading dough, and everything real feels so far. He's like, I miss it. I'm separate from it. I miss it. And everything real feels so far away. And he is just desperately depressed and wants to go home, but can't, and has to keep doing it for people like Jubilee or all of these people that he's ever loved to have happiness. This is fucking great, right? Like, this is real pathos. This is, like you feel.
And I would love it if anyone that could write dialogue had written it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think go back to that Wolverine opening in 25 where he's really, I think 25 or 35, where he's just depressed, and like here's a man who's wrestling with depression and violence.
I have to give you a ton of credit right now. I think you were proving it more to me than anything that he's not the demon I have made him in my head, that it's just a stylistic thing, that I just can't handle the way he writes, and that's okay. And
it's 26, Wolverine 26. I also like how he has a boring boyfriend named Jeff. Like, he's just dating some guy named Jeff, and like, you know what I mean? Like, he just has that's who he goes to for like sympathy and company, right?
yeah,
He has this like boring dude he dates named Jeff, who they like hang out in the backyard and drink beer and like raise a daughter together.
we have talked about how Jeff is a great addition to his cast.
He's Wolverine's boyfriend, and I love that for him. I think he has a very nice, like, he has like a boring guy named Jeff who's just like away from. And again, it's Percy, right? Percy says he feels separate from him. The only person who makes him feel like he's a real person is Jeff Bannister, right? Is the schlubby fucking dude, but that's all he wants. He just wants to hang out and make out with some schlubby dude named Jeff, and he can't do that because Beast has now enslaved him and forces him to murder people. So it's so good. How do you hate this?
I hate it, but that is okay, and we still invited you on, and we will still invite you back, even though you like something we hate.
I do. I love Percy.
I will make one pitch to the audience, because you made the comment about like this was the best Wolverine since Claremont. I think Old Man Logan by Jeff Lemire is better than both the way Claremont wrote him and this. So everybody go read Jeff Lemire's Old Man Logan.
Eventually.
Omega Red in the blue and gold. Like, it should have been unsettling to see him in full-on X-Men garb, but instead it just felt like the ultimate insult to be brought in by Red, not just
by a man he
being
tortured.
Omega Red, but
by a man he tortured.
Yeah,
right.
Yep.
Like he stuck the carbonadium synthesizer, which is poisonous, right? He stuck a poison thing in Omega Red to control him, right? Like he fucked with him the most.
Absolutely.
But Hank is going full MK Ultra. And I think that's worth mentioning. Like, if we're going to talk about it, right? He is the CIA Project MK Ultra on these prisoners. He's developing assassination tools.
Yep.
Like, this is just fucking wild stuff. How do you not like this? This is great.
I will say, I made sure to hit it here. I was proud of Marvel, like in the current political environment, to straight up call him a fascist was pretty cool. Like that seems like that's a trigger word in a lot of places right now, and so that was cool to see. They made it past the Marvel censors or whatever.
For me, I have a problem with Beast being a fascist. Like at my core, like that's the problem. You say, oh, how can you not love this? I'm like, because Beast is a fucking fascist.
That's
Kelsey Grammer's not allowed to be a fascist.
No.
Do I need to invite you into my dark web now?
Ooh.
I mean, we can go there.
We could. We should.
I say that because I have a special background just for dark web.
You're gonna have so much to edit. This is gonna be like a 3-hour episode.
Oh, it's gonna be a long one, but that's okay. Dark Web #1, written by Zeb Wells and drawn by Adam Kubert, opens with Ben Reilly and Janine on a date, window shopping, when Peter Parker and MJ approach them. Peter announces he'll need his stuff back, and Ben's like, what stuff? And they start cackling. Peter rips off Ben's hair, and then his mouth and other features, one by one. It's all, of course, a dream. He and Madeline are in limbo, discussing their plans to take back everything they believe was stolen from them. Peter, MJ, and all of Harry Osborn's friends are gathered in the Coffee Bean to celebrate the late Harry's birthday and remember him. Zeb had to include another reminder that everyone but the reader knows exactly what happened to Peter and MJ. I don't know if you guys are following Amazing Spider-Man, so I don't know if you're as annoyed by that plot thread as I am, but we're like 11 issues in. They need to fucking tell us by now. Like, this is the dumbest like needling ever. But anyways, he paid for everyone's drinks, but won't go into the cafe. Peter tells him he shouldn't blame himself, and so they have a philosophical conversation about clones and if they're the same or if they're different, and all of the things that this whole arc is going to be about. Ben and Maddie meet with Eddie Brock, who has promised information on his son Dylan. Maddie says soon, but first she must lift some of his burdens, and they close a door. Back in New York, demonic possessions of anything and everything start, reminding everyone of the original Inferno. Statues attack, and a horse-drawn carriage grows teeth. That sort of stuff. Peter immediately recognizes it, while Cyclops and Jean debate if they should, give Maddie benefit of the doubt. Chasm attacks Norman Osborn, who attempts to put his gold goblin gear on, but Ben rigged it to explode. Maddie unleashes Venom, but realizes quickly she wiped too much of his mind, and he's returned to his feral, eat Spider-Man's brain state. Before we get into anything plot specific, Keegan.
Yeah.
Should this just be delegated to around the universe? Like, when they announced this, I thought it was more X-Men based.
I feel like in future issues, yeah, probably. But, we'll see where it goes.
Well, I mean, I guess we have to talk about the Duggan Dark Web X-Men issues. So I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll decide.
We'll see. It'll depend on how important they end up being. If they all, no, I'm gonna hold off until
we'll play it by ear. We don't need to have this debate an hour and a half into this episode.
Tell you, it's gonna be a long episode. I'm sorry. That's my fault. I ramble. Keegan, I have to know, you're the Venom guy.
Yeah.
So this is a big movement on the Eddie Brock scale. So where are you on this?
This shit sucks. That's my official statement.
Okay.
Here's the thing. And the I almost feel like the fake Venom guy, because I love Venom so much, and that's a lot of like my identity on TikTok was my growing love for Venom. It was all through my man Donny Cates. Like, I used to think that symbiote shit was the cringiest, try hard, hot topic clearance rack bullshit in the world. I hated symbiote stuff. Like, I always thought it was cringy. And then my buddy was like, read King in Black, read Donny Cates' run. And I did. And I was like, yo, Eddie Brock is my dude. That is the most Keegan core guy in the world. What? Yes. So like Donnie is responsible for my love of Venom. So anything that takes away like that, like just dad trying to do his best for his son that he is completely screwed over, kind of lovable loser.
He's just an ex-con trying to get back his kids.
Yeah, it's like anything that takes that away, I'm just like,
well, you know what's
this is dumb.
extra frustrating is it's only going to last for this storyline, and then he's going to be right back because Ewing and Ron V's story is only half over. They're not going to abandon what they're telling, so we've got Feral Eddie for this,
it's just like the way that dumbass War of the Realms thing derailed Kate's Venom run for like a good 3 issues. Like, it's the same thing, if you ask me.
I've never understood why Marvel does it this way, because DC will just have the crossovers happening, and they'll have their main event or their main stories going, and if the main story is contradicting it, they'll just let you figure out the timeline later. Yeah. Marvel loves to do this thing where they'll interrupt these long epic runs, and you've got this awkward middle section when you buy the omnibus in 10 years where you're like, what the fuck's this? What's Dark Web? And you gotta flip through it because it technically happened.
Nothing. Sword, it was issue 2 when King in Black happened. As an X-Men reader, I wanted King of Black to go the fuck away. But if we're talking about Venom here, I want to talk about, I am not a Venom guy, right? Yeah. So here's what, I never liked Venom as a hero. I shouldn't say I never. As a kid in the 90s, Venom was great. But like as an adult, because the original Venom story works like this to me. It's really a story about rejection. It's a story about not accepting rejection well. Both both the symbiote and Eddie are dealing with rejection from Spider-Man and Peter Parker, respectively. It's the story about two exes basically getting together and causing fucking havoc, right? And
I was just gonna say that's why they had to revert to that state for this arc, is because that's both Ben and Maddie. That's exactly, you just described them. They're two exes, two spurned exes that found each other. So why they're doing it makes sense, but I also totally understand why, as a fan of modern Venom, that would be really frustrating. It makes sense to me. So I have to be honest. I'm kind of where you used to be, Keegan, with the symbiotes. Like, I'm actually really into Ron V's Carnage for the first time. I've always hated Carnage until the last year, and like this current Carnage run is really fun. But the only Venom I ever liked was Flash Thompson as Agent Venom. I know it's a dorky as hell run, but I really had fun with it.
That opening scene, you don't need this anymore.
Yeah.
This is a direct callback. Zeb Wells loves Inferno.
Oh yeah, that was really clear. That's really clear in a lot of things he's done, but especially this whole issue. Yeah.
If you go back to 2009, his New Mutants run, the whole arc of the issue is what happened to the babies that they were trying to sacrifice in Inferno, right? Like that was the follow up. He really is an Inferno guy, and
I read his run in college, but it's been 10 years, so I'm definitely here for as much.
It's a very good book, right? Yeah. But a nothing being in a nowhere place, abandoned and all alone. That's a scene from X-Men number 233, way back in 1988, in the Outback era, right? And that's what happens to her right before she turns into the Goblin Queen, right before she sells her soul. That's in that same dream sequence. And she's a mannequin, right? Jean has come and taken Scott strips her of her face, right? Takes her hair off, rips off her eyes, her mouth, sticks it on this mannequin, which turns into Jean Grey. And they take her baby away, her child, which again, we go back to Eddie and his son, right? Like the reason is that Jean took her husband, her family, her life, right? Away from her and left her this empty shell that she had to act out. She had to lash out to establish herself, to be a real person. She had to get rid of these people. With Eddie, this is where Maddie really commits a crime. Because with Ben, she's pointing it out. And in the very opening scene, she recreates the Inferno scene with Ben. Right. And she says, and she's forming an emotional connection with him. She's not really manipulating him. She's going, they did the same thing to you. They can do the same thing to you. They're taking everything away from you. They've already done that. like you have to do this, so you have to establish yourself, right? You have to tear these people up so you can be free of them. But with Eddie, she does this to Eddie. This is her point of no return, because she inflicts that on Eddie. Eddie has a sense of family. He's trying to get back to that, right? Like Eddie knows who he wants to be. She takes that all away from him, just like Scott does in The Dream, or like Peter does to Ben. So this is where her villain, because you're going to get a lot of Maddie defenders. Maddie did nothing wrong, right? Because it's a very popular podcast that will defend Maddie to the death, right? Much more popular than, right? But in truth, that's the line where she becomes her abuser.
Right.
So
I'm not going to overly defend Maddie here, but I am really afraid that this book isn't going to treat her delicately enough, because I loved the arc Vita Ayala. Is that how you say it?
Ayala, yeah.
Appreciate the arc they gave her 3 or 4 months ago, and would love for that to be honored. And I'm really afraid that the abrupt exit from New Mutants might be because this book, the writing was on the wall that it wasn't going to treat that arc delicately enough.
You can't have an Inferno without a dead baby. And Venom's got a kid kicking around who is currently missing. So I'm saying that there's a reason why we haven't seen that kid show back up. And she's on Maddie's plate.
Okay.
Also, bad shit happens to the X-Men at the Rockefeller Center. I was just at the Rockefeller Center about a week ago. And they would know
horse
this.
and buggy didn't eat you or nothing.
No statue came alive.
The town I live in is more prone to horse and buggies than so like I am well used to horse and buggies, right?
Nice.
But and that's at Columbus Circle, by the way. You're gonna rent a horse and buggy. You're not at Rockefeller, right? Sorry, let me do New York at you. But like if we go back to X-Men 99, that's the famous, like they're hanging out at Rockefeller Center and they get attacked by Sentinels, and that starts off the whole Phoenix saga, right? So you'd think they'd be like, you know what, let's just skip this place. Nothing good ever happens to us at Rockefeller Center. The last time you got kidnapped by an alien and shot into Jamaica Bay for a couple of years, right? We had the whole thing on the moon. Let's skip the tree at Rockefeller Center. Let's just see a show in the village, right? And then they get attacked by Inferno monsters instead. So nothing good ever happens in Rockefeller Center. It's just a bad place.
So you guys did see where Zeb Wells said that they would have called this Inferno if Hickman hadn't literally just used the name.
I did not see that. No.
Yeah. So it was gonna be even more overt than like what we've already seen for overt like follow up or homage or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, this was originally going to maybe not even originally. Maybe it was just he would have loved to, because I guess it's been a year and a half, so he's had plenty of time. But yeah, he said.
By the way, Textus Tenebrarum means the text of darkness.
Oh,
that was I looked that up for my notes when I was doing this about 2 hours before we recorded. I was trying to jot things. I want to. No one's asked me to be on their podcast. I'm like, I have to take notes.
I love the thoroughness.
Yeah.
I go a little more in depth when we have 2 or 3 books, but 8 books, my notes were very, very haphazard because
I had to go through it. I read all of these twice. Which is a lot.
I read them all twice too, because I read them just for fun, and then I have to read them as I type my recaps. But
1 million zillion jillion dillion cotillion times later.
So so you guys are not excited about this. You guys did not like this book as a whole. Is that?
No, I'm not saying I dislike. Like I actually, as someone who really is hating the Spider-Man run, I liked this more than I thought I would. For one, anytime Adam draws a book, like I'll be there for his art. I'm actually liking the Norman Osborn story as much as I'm not liking Spider-Man as a whole. Like we all know where it's going to end, but it's still neat to see like sins-eaten Norman attempting to stay clean and the beautiful disaster it's going to be. I really like the design of Hallows Eve. I don't know that I love her setup, but I don't know, kind of the hobgoblin-ishness of it's neat. It's got kind of half Maddie vibes, half the hobgoblin, and it looks really cool.
Like the Demo Goblin, yeah.
Yeah. but I don't know. I would say if I had to put a number on it, I'm like a 6. Like I'm more than halfway too excited, but I'm not like super invested by any means.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the worst thing I've read. It's just I'm not that into it.
And that checklist it also decreases my excitement because
Oh, God,
it's like half our poll list for the next month, and a lot of them don't look particularly interesting. Like if it was just the Duggan issues and just the main book, maybe I'd be a little more excited. I'm really digging Ewing's Venom book, so having that derailed has definitely derailed my excitement a little. Or Sublime in 2 billion years in the past first.
Let's do. Yeah, Keegan, go.
I'll go either way. I don't.
Let's go to the past. I have thoughts.
Okay.
I have thoughts.
Marauders number 9, written by Steve Orlando and drawn by Eleonora Carlini. We're still 2 billion years in the past, and Commander Nightfount is the leader of the Unbreathing, planning his next attack on the Threshold. Meanwhile, in Threshold, Sublime has taken over Fang and is attacking the Marauders. Tempo, Aurora, and Somnus try to save him, and realizing they can't, Somnus uses the Dreamscape to make his death painless. Sublime continues his assault, and the Eruption team that Nightfount sent arrives. Aurora manages to clear the board, but in the escape, one of the Threshold 3, a mask, gets taken. They reach Helix Home, the sanctuary of the Threshold, and meet Grove, their leader. There are both mutants and humans there, which pisses off Cassandra Nova. Remember, she's on the team. Yeah, she's here too. We find out Threshold mate like fish in big spawning pools, because of course, mutants were polyamorous way before it was cool. Bishop reveals his plans for the last boost fruit, involved taking out Sublime and Archaea at a molecular level. And then finally, we catch up with Amos, alive but in unbreathing custody, confronted by Commander Nightfount, who reveals himself to be Strife. Are you a big Strife?
I am a big fucking Strife
Okay.
fan. This is the immediate. How do you get Joe to like your stuff? Is you put fucking Strife in it.
That was
Strife,
you threw out there something in this book like was the immediate way to get Joe in, and I was trying to figure out if it could be anything else.
Strife is the way, baby.
Okay.
Strife is the way. I love Strife. He is the crown prince of the drama goths. All this episode I've been talking about drama goth villain. This man was like, how do I get revenge for being put up for adoption? He was put up for adoption in the future and lived as like a prince, right? So he goes back into the past, kidnaps his parents, monologues at them while feeding them baby food, right? Like, this is Strife. Strife is the theater. He's an evil theater kid. And truly, I love that for him. I cannot, always and forever. Also, he's also kind of like gay Lord Zed, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if Lord Zed was like, you know, like picking up, like, I mean that with love. You know, he's the theater kid Lord Zed. And he has these monologues, like in the beginning, you know, of the book, where he's sitting on his throne and he's surrounded by his underlings and he's soliloquying about the crushing them with the virus. Love him. I love Strife forever.
I will say that soliloquy was much better on the second read once you knew who it was.
It's Strife.
100%, yeah.
Again, he's gay Lord Zed, and I love him. I love him forever. I will always love Strife. I feel bad for Strife. When he showed up in Cable, and he was just like, gonna do this ritual, and like young Cable had like rescued half the babies, so it's just like, well, the recipe said 10, so we only had 5, so we just cloned them. That's probably gonna work fine.
I loved those final stories about Kid Cable. Those were so fun.
So good, right? I love Strife so much. I would like to say about this issue though, Steve Orlando, who is not listening to this, so I can say whatever I want about him, is a big fucking nerd for making me have to look up what the Great Oxidization Event was. What is the Great Oxidization Event? It is a real thing that happened 2.4 billion years ago.
Yeah, first time Bishop brought it up a few issues ago, I had to Google it too. Yeah,
fucking nerd, right? Like, if I see him at a con, I'm stealing his lunch money for making me have to look this shit up, right? So, and this plays into their breathing, right? Because the oxidization came as a byproduct of an increase of bacterial life form in the sea, right? The water. So when they're talking about their spawning pools and like that, this is Steve Orlando going, I read this in a book in college, and I'm going to make a whole fucking X-Men story out of this biology book I found, right? And
but it's so weird that they're clearly humans and mutants with the exact same actual mating process as us. So it's really weird that
we don't know.
like, it's a weird connection.
I think they just walk out of the sea. I don't know if they're actually boning. Steve Orlando also made the horniest book in all the X line.
Oh, absolutely. I did have a Strife question that, as the Strife mega fan, you could probably answer.
I fucking love Strife. Yeah, please.
Has there been established why suddenly people can immediately tell him and Cable apart?
No.
Like, there doesn't seem to be any suspicion there that he might be Cable, and I thought that was always a thing that had to be established. Like,
no, because like nobody's like Cable's just not up to this level of nonsense.
That's fair.
I mean?
Okay.
Like when Strife is intentionally attempting to look like Cable, it works. But like Strife is like off like he's like sitting on top of this box and giving this sort of throne, giving speeches. He's like, I will crush the unbeliever, blah 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 blah. And Cable's just like totally not that, right? Cable's just like, yep, gotta go do a thing, right? Gotta go do my, like he's like gruff and right. And Strife is just, I don't know.
I'm fully convinced him showing up is further proof of what you said, Keegan. These guys are all fucking time liars.
Yeah.
There's no way he showed up if the threshold is really ancient mutants. They're like remnants of a revived Genosha that all went and hid or something. They are remnants of some civilization that went back in time. There's no way this actually is what threshold claims to be. I'm fully convinced. Fucking time liars.
I'm inclined to agree.
But I want to know where he's going. Speaking of where he's going, what's going on with the Lockheed story? Why is Nova just on the team now? Like, when she showed up, it was because she was like, had been doing secret reconnaissance on Krakoa or whatever, however they phrased it. And where is Cerebra? I just feel like Orlando is throwing as many things in this pot as he can, and then is just, as they boil over and fall out, we're not bringing them up anymore. There's so much that just hasn't been brought up in like 3 issues.
Yeah.
What is he setting up here? How are these things coming together? I need to know. It's driving me insane. And why does the art look like fucking the whatever it is, Batman Family Adventures? Like, this doesn't look like a comic book to me. The art is like drawn in Java or something. I can't handle the art.
It's funny that you say that about this book, because I actually feel that way more so about New Mutants now.
Oh, see, I'm not hating the New Mutants guest art. I'm okay with the new art.
We have to fight about New Mutants. I love New Mutants. I think it's good. But this with the art, I would say this, and I say this maybe to antagonize Keegan. This would be good art for Eleanor Carlini. Would be good on a Power Rangers book.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, right. So, Bulk Ranger is my thing. I don't hate the art here. I like the art here. I do hate Power Rangers comics. Fuck those. But
you don't.
I don't mess with Power Rangers comics. It's like a thing.
All of them, or because like isn't there like there's like 1,000 now? Like I feel like I keep getting told different runs I need to actually check out, and I haven't yet.
Here's the thing. All right. Here's the thing. Bulk Ranger is gonna be revealed as a fake Power Rangers fan. I think, and I'm talking about the character. I think Lord Draken is dumb as shit. I hate Lord Draken as much as I hate John Lennon. Both bad ideas.
I've read nothing of it, but I think the character design looks really cool. Like, every time I see him pop up, I think it looks cool.
Mid like Cincinnati. Call me MJF. Mid. All
fucking Cincinnati. Oh, good lord. Listen. They do some wild shit in those comics.
That's wild. Why it's dumb. Power Rangers is simple. Okay? It's simple. You show up, 20 minutes, They get their ass beat. They get a big robot. They win. Simple. That's what it needs to stay as.
I think Eleanor Carlini's art is where a lot of this breaks down, and I don't think it's succinct. Which isn't to say anything about her art. I just don't think that her art works here. And
a lot of the action scenes are indecipherable for me.
They are hard. They're hard to follow. And Marauders always. I think I said this. I said this on TikTok weeks ago about Marauders. Marauders fails to deliver the promise that it was giving you, which was that we're doing a rescue thing for mutants. The original premise that Duggan had, which was like, we're going to go explore the geopolitics of what refugees look like in countries that don't agree with the treaty. And
I love that book. That whole run was fun as hell.
But he got sidetracked into the Hellfire trade, which was fun because it was interesting. We didn't have Immortal X-Men at the time, so we got a lot of the Quiet Council intrigue between X Factor and that, right? Like, and now, like, Orlando comes on and Orlando says, we're getting back to that premise. And the minute he gets on the book, it's like, let's go into space with the Shi'ar, and let's go into the path of 2 billion. Let's talk about biology events.
Well, they've time traveled twice. We're on issue 9, and they've made 2 separate trips to the past.
Right? Like, this guy is on. So it is my least favorite book with Legion of X, I think. Taking a spot.
I still can't believe that you're that down on Legion, but at least we can all here agree on Marauders being low on
Marauders. I said it to you guys today. I found myself bored halfway through this issue with Marauders. I like the art on Marauders better than I like the story on Marauders. And I feel like I'm the inverse on New Mutants. I like the story on New Mutants better than I like the art on New Mutants. And
I thought this New Mutants and X-Treme were going to be like the toughest reads for me, so I stuck them early in the stack to try to get through them. And I will tell you, of the 3, this is the only one I still struggled with. Like, I will get to X-Treme, we'll get to New Mutants, but this was the only one out of the 8 we read today that like was actually a hard read for me. Like, I struggled to care about this issue to an extent.
It was fun stuff.
I have one more speculation thing I want to talk about, and then we can move on because I realize we're over 2 hours.
It's 1 a.m. here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Keep going. I'm fine.
If they aren't time liars, what is the relationship between a.k.a. and the Grove? Like I feel like it's further impossible because we literally we had the whole thing about the machine that is Earth at the end of Judgment Day, like sees Krakoa as its parental figure and all that shit. I just feel like it doesn't fit in the mythology of Krakoa, a.k.a. and all that stuff to have this 2 billion year old mutant. Unless it
is good. This is a gas leak season. This whole book is a gas leak season.
I do New Mutants because I actually am really digging the Mutants art suddenly. Like I would say this was the second funniest book. I got a lot of laughs out of it. Written by Charlie Jane Anders and drawn by Alberto Alburquerque. Sheila Sexton, a.k.a. Escapade, is a U-Man. Well, she swapped places with one at least. Shella. God damn me and my pronunciations. Sheila Sexton, a.k.a. Escapade, is a U-Man. Well, she swapped places with one at least. Since the whole crew was captured last issue, she has swapped places with one, and it has led to some funny hijinks while she tries to find Cerebella, including being forced to make coffee by some coworkers. We find out a little more about her powers. The U-Man she swapped with seems disoriented, confused. When she finds Cerebella, she asks her to just kill her and gets mad when she finds Cerebella, she asks her to just kill her and gets mad when Escapade refuses. Sublime shows up, and desperate, she tries a second swap and takes Cerebella's place, sacrificing herself. Cerebella runs back to the cell to free her friends. Wolfsbane convinces the group that they have to abandon her. Morgan waits at the unconscious U-Man, though, and miraculously, Sheila swaps back when her powers deplete completely. As they make their escape, they end up on the roof where Sheila, you just corrected me. What was it? Sheila realizes they're in the exact place of the vision she's been trying to prevent. This is where and how Morgan will die. All right, Keegan, you have to lead us.
Have you looked at it?
To me, it pops. I love it. To me, it totally fits New Mutants.
It looks like a webtoon to me, and I mean, webtoons are great, but not when I'm reading comics. I don't know what to tell you. I just don't like it.
This is fair. To me, Marauders is 100% webtoons, but there's this appeals to me.
Genuine question when you say that. Have you read webtoons?
I've read the Batman one, and
Batman one was good.
But
right?
like before like
It's a great
the big
story.
guys started swinging in on it, like when it was like webtoons.
I've read a couple. Like I've said, I have a nibbling who is super into them, so they've pushed me on it. But
okay.
The baby apocalypse. You had to. Sorry, I call him that because I was thinking about like you were like, oh, I have to put the kid down, right? This is you edit this out.
Yeah.
I know you don't like it, but like you were like putting the kid down, and I immediately started looking up like apocalypse references because it took you a super long time, and I'm like, this motherfucker's going through the crucible. That baby is like, right? You are as beneath me. The Babylonians tried to put me to bed once, father, and they, with this.
That phrase, that word, the nibbling. I still feel. I had 17-year-old was a niece my entire life, and they just came out as non-binary. And when you Google it, that's the only term for it that they have out there is nibbling, and I hate it because it sounds like a snack. But
it does sound like a snack.
It does sound kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna go have a nibble. Yeah.
But apparently they haven't come up with something better yet. So
give them time.
Eventually they will.
Gen Z is brilliant. I'm so proud of Gen Z.
Absolutely.
I think
they're everything millennial. I think everyone here is a millennial, right? Everything we said we were gonna be, Gen Z actually is.
I mean, I'm an early millennial, and so like I remember like a lot of the homophobia and racism that came in this generation, and Gen Z is just smashing that down, and I'm just like, man, you guys are way cooler than we were. Like, yeah, you can make fun of us, that's fine, but like, like you're good to do that, but like
Gen Z is some of the funniest people in the world. I work with them every day of my life. They're some of the funniest people in the world.
I also have to work with a lot of Gen Z, right? Because I have to do a lot of It's frustrating. But anyway, all right. I'm like,
I'm starting to deal with some early alphas because I'm still substituting all the different grades. So when I go into a classroom, I get some of the youngsters.
Oh, I deal with college students, so I'm doing okay.
You got the older Z's still, yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty all right by the time that they get there, right? Like
I will say I think, and then we'll get back to our recording.
Sorry, we're way off topic. No wonder this episode's 3 hours long.
I do think the Z's who were in high school for COVID and those who had already graduated, there is a massive personality difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Gonna be felt for decades. Like I think they might have to change the generational divide lines just based on that alone.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Anyways, New Mutants. For a guest arc, I the first issue underwhelmed me, but this was a shit ton of fun. Maybe it's just because I went in not expecting much, but I was giggling the whole time. Like I think the Escapade, the new character, is a great addition. As they reveal more about this power set, it's becoming more and more interesting. Like the second swap, but then she had no control over the swap back necessarily. Like all that shit. That was really fun. That was a really cool move. I want the reveal on who's taking over New Mutants completely, though, because we only have one more issue on this guest arc. Like,
is Charlie Jane Andrews not doing it full time?
It was originally solicited as a 3-issue guest arc, and I believe it turned into a 4-issue guest arc, but it's still labeled as a guest arc. So I want to know. I want to see who takes over. I want the next big run because I love the New Mutants cast. I want to bring in some fresh blood.
This is a New Mutant story in like the best classic way, right?
Yeah.
If you go back to the when the Claremont stuff got good was around the time that Magic joins the team, and there's like an issue where like there's a story where Magic and Danny have to save the rest of the team because they've been like brainwashed by Emma, right? And it's them versus the world, and we get the them versus the world, and Doug has a couple there. Doug and Warlock do back in the day, right? And this understands that, and this has that tone. But if I could just bring something up, the U-Men, fantastic, right? There are more in creation, but they're really fucking hilarious here. I have in my notes here. U-Men are just toxic fandom and power armor. We must claim what we love, tear it apart, and ultimately control it. If you think about fandoms and as the U-Men as a metaphor for fandoms, Like the U-Men are ripping out mutant organs and killing what they love, right? They love mutants, and they kill what they love to try to consume it and make it theirs, And if we look at how like a lot of fanins work, like fan canons, and when the narrative that comes out contradicts like fanins, like popular fanins, how aggressive it can get. I really like this is to me. I'm like, oh, this is exactly that message, right? Of toxic fandoms.
Absolutely. I now that you're talking about it, I'm really comparing how enjoyable it was here to a recent DC book that was very heavy on attempting to be commentary on toxic fandom that did it really poorly. And
What
I
was
love
it?
the Human Sedley. It was the most recent Young Justice tie-in for Dark Crisis.
Oh god.
It derailed really frustrating ways. I have a few TikToks about it that I could send you because I ranted really heavily on it just because it attacked the wrong people for like very valid. It was a very valid thing to criticize, but it attacked an audience that I don't think causes that issue, if that makes sense. Basically, the Venn diagram of Young Justice fans and the misogynistic people that hate the new Legacy heroes is just two non-concentric circles.
Yeah.
Like no one is sitting there like, man, I really wish they'd used Tim Drake, but also I hate all these gay characters. Like that's not the same. Like there's no one that has those two thoughts. But it was a book that acted like that was everyone that's asking for the Young Justice characters to be utilized was those people. And like that overlap is very like no, that's not a thing. And instead of giving us a use of those characters after years of not using them, they made a 4-issue long meta commentary that was insulting us. Anyways, that was another derail. So
Yeah, no,
New Mutants.
I'm having fun with this story. Like I find it interesting seeing where it's going, seeing what's coming up, trying to figure it all out. Like that part's fun for me. I like the book itself. I had fun with the book.
I think the book is a lot of fun. I think Shella is really interesting. Escapade is when you guys did your X-Men draft the other week.
You would have drafted
Escapade
Shella?
was Escapade. Storm was one, and either Cerebella or Escapade was like the next one down because I think there's a lot going on with Escapade in a way that makes writers want to write Escapade. Escapade's character is that she does not like her powers. She doesn't want to use her powers. And she doesn't want to use her powers because her powers are based in identity. And it's about having to pose as someone you aren't, even though everyone around you is going to think that you're that person. And she has to pose as that person and not do anything wild or anything or be exposed and be put into danger, right? She's constantly in danger and has to displace her own identity. So she hates it. She doesn't use her powers, right? Like this is her being in an uncomfortable situation. I think there's a lot of especially when you consider that this is a teenage trans girl. And you put her in that situation, and her powers are a metaphor for her larger identity. That's
out of this year's voices, not even just that voices, but like all of the voices, definitely the best new character, best. Like I loved that first introduction to the character. That was really.
They're on a roll. They gave us Somnus last year, and we didn't talk about Somnus, but Somnus is great in Marauders, and like they really have been putting a lot of care into like introducing these characters in a way.
Well, and then using them after they introduce them, because that's the one area that we haven't been doing. That's the Spider-Verse stuff where they'll introduce really cool Spider-Man parallels, and they never use them. So I really do appreciate that about these X characters, that they're not just, you hear, oh, they're just pandering. There's nothing pandering about them. They have all been used front and center, which is amazing, and I hope they continue.
Martha, by the way, has a right to be pissed at the X-Men. I'm just pushing this through. But Martha, or Cerebella, Martha Johansson, has a good reason to be pissed at the X-Men, right? Like, really good reason. They made fun of her for being mutilated, right? Like, they called her No Girl, right? John Sublime didn't call her No Girl. If you go back to Morris, he called her Martha. She had her body and then her name stripped away from her. And so she has every right to be pissed. I think that's again, we're talking about identity and bodies and being in a new body. And like all of this is such a good metaphor, right? It's good metaphor for the larger issues, but also, again, listen, I'm a cis het white dude, right? Like, so this is not necessarily, a perspective I can talk from well, but like, as someone with a love of social justice and a craving of equality, like I see these characters and I go, this is a net positive, right?
Absolutely.
Like to have these ideas, and it's like because we have all of these laws going on right now about, like, say, trans girls in sports, right? There was one trans girl in high school sports in Kentucky, and they passed a law about trans girls in high school sports to fuck with one girl. You know what I mean? Like, and so if you are some trans kid in one of these bumfuck awful flyover states, right? Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, right? If you're from, move. Listen, I'm not apologizing for calling those states bullshit. And you read this and you go, okay, my parent, like I get fucked with at school by the kids, by the teachers, by my local by my government. My government takes time out of its day to mess with me, right? But at least here, this is something I understand, and so that's overall a net positive. So New Mutants is really doing a lot. The story's really good. The characters are really interesting, and the book itself is really important to have. So.
Okay. X-Treme
X-Treme.
X-Men #1.
I love this. I love this. This is so good.
Written by Chris Claremont, drawn by Salvador Larroca. This takes place undisclosed years ago. Right after the last volume of X-Treme X-Men, grad student Kitty Pryde shows up to the Bells of Hell, a cool dive bar she works at, to find everyone dead and the evil Ogon there waiting for her. She fights him, but he kicks right through her intangibility. He reveals he's been hiding in her soul since the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine mini from 1985. She tries to stab him with Wolverine's severed claws, and they snap against his chest. He goes to stab her with them, but instead her outfit's magically changed to guard matching his. He passes his mask to her, and she tries to land one last blow, and then wakes up in her room with her roommate, Rachel Summers. Rachel comforts her with some real love and snuggles. Then a badass Storm shows up. That Storm design. The whole team is with her. Bishop, Gambit, Sage, and Rogue. And then Wolverine shows up, and he recaps the history with Ogun and how he feasted on her soul. He announces they have to go after him, but Rachel explains there's also this mutant hate group Purity they have to deal with. Storm reminds them they're all global marshals now, and they decide to go after Ogun first, but keep an eye on Purity. And then the issue ends with Ogun kind of monologuing to himself.
As you do.
Keegan. Keep reading? Yay, nay?
I don't know.
Joe, win us over. Should we keep reading?
No, I can't. Listen, there are things I find about this book deeply, deeply hysterical. I won't say that they're great or good, but I find them funny.
I already said I put it in the stack that I thought I would not enjoy. I had fun. It was a really quick read. Claremont usually for me is too text heavy and it'll be kind of a slower read, but this flew by. This was fun. I liked it. The big win for me was that Storm design. I love the way Storm looks in this issue.
I love that Chris Claremont is a cranky old man. I love that Chris Claremont's a cranky old man because he at this point is like, fuck it, they're all together. Like he did not waste that you're sitting in an inn when you see an adventurer walk in, like, thing, right? He's just like, they're all in the bedroom. Why are they all in Kitty's bedroom? Fuck it, because they're there. Let's move on. And that's it, right? Like, that's how we do it. Kitty has a bad dream. This is a Chris Claremont comic, so she is having a sleepover with pantsless Rachel, and they cradle each other in their arms because, again, this is a Chris Claremont comic. This is what he does. The University of British Columbia had a multi-year-long project called the Claremont Run, which basically examined kink in Chris Claremont's original run, right? Like kink and bisexuality and gender identity and gender fluidity. It's like, and they were amazing at it, right? Academic. This is what the man does, right? He does this. And again, he's just like, fuck it. Do you care? You don't care. You just want to see the guys together, and you want. Oh, and Wolverine's there too, right? Like he just Wolverine just shows up, like he just walks out of the closet, like, oh hey guys, like, oh yeah, we're gonna do something, like it's amazing. I love how just like Chris Claremont needed a paycheck, and this is what we got, right? Like.
Well, I have to be honest. You mentioned the Wolverine come out of the closet. My first thought was like, what a weird place for Krakoan Gate. And then, like, not even a split second later, was like, oh no, this is long before Krakoa even existed.
It's Lila Cheney. Yeah, it's Lila Cheney.
That's Lila just popping them in.
Right. She's just like, oh, yeah, right. She's a plot device. It's great. Because he's got to spend the whole issue telling you about the 1987. Does it say that 7? No, it's 85.
It says 85 in the issue, but I don't trust them to be right.
It is. It's 85 because the original Wolverine May series was from 84. I think this is the follow-up, right? He did it with Frank Miller. He did 2 Wolverine May series in the 80s with Frank Miller. This is the second one, and this one was bad. You know what I mean? Like the first one is really good that he did, and this one is like not. And so it confuses me whether, like, you know what we need a sequel to? That one, the one with all the ninjas, right? Like when Kitty Pryde becomes a ninja, yeah, that's the one. I don't know why, but this book, I was gonna skip this book until I had to come on this show, and then I was like, "Oh fuck it, I got."
Oh, see, I assumed as King of Claremont fans, you'd be the one pushing us to keep going.
I think the King of Claremont fans is probably Connor Goldsmith over there on Cerebro. I am a lowly.
Okay.
I'm a humble Claremont monger in the town.
Out of our tiny corner of the internet, the big Claremont fan.
Yeah. I'm but a humble Claremontian monger, selling him in the stands, but not this. Anything Claremont gets real terrible after a while. Like
I have a general respect for his tenure, but I find even going back and reading the best stuff he wrote pretty difficult by today's standards. So I do not.
I've even been finding the Gambit series that's been going on just insufferable.
But no, anything he's written post 2000, I find insufferable. To be honest, like I expected to hate this and enjoyed it slightly more. Like this was, but I think it's because of how quickly paced it was.
The stuff in his 2000s run that is good from the X-Treme X-Men is the Sage of it all.
Okay.
I think he makes Sage in that era really important and really cool, right? Like she's much more than the lady in the chair, but that Percy kind of put her in that spot. But like, Claremont loves her, and so that's a good thing. And again, I just love how the fact that Claremont's just like, hurry up, we got a story to tell, fuck it, let's just move, right? Like,
well, you mentioned being a cranky old man, and I think about how, like, when I was in college in 2009, that he already had that he was already the cranky old man who's come back. Like he came back and did, like, I don't remember if it was the follow up to what he wrote in night. Like he's gone back multiple times to be like, I'm gonna finish the story I never got to finish.
Yeah,
he was already considered the ancient guy 15 years ago, and now he's still cranking out stuff.
He was. I mean, none of us.
It's charming in its way.
None of us would be talking about X-Men right now if it wasn't for him. I mean, that he is a foundational, and his stuff in his original run is great. But yeah, this is not good. And it's just not good. His funniest moment was when Fabian Nicieza retconned Nova Roma and to being like it was all Selene, right? Selene made an illusion they're all just British people that think they're Romans in the jungle, and then Claremont was like, no, that sucks, and he just came back and like he's like, that retcon never happened, right? Like, and it's the best because it was the best moment of him being cranky. He, like, how dare you retcon me? I'm Chris goddamn Claremont.
Have you heard some of his comments at cons this year? He's got some pretty cranky old man stuff he's saying in person these days.
Yeah, let's not.
All right, you guys ready to go around the Marvel universe?
Yeah, let's.
All right. So Captain Marvel 44 continues to be a preamble for its crossover with Duggan's run. It's Brood stuff, so I read it. It was fine. It
happened.
It had the best version. Had the best version of Rogue I've read this week. So power there, considering
high bar
and other stuff. But also, okay. the thing I have literally harped on since probably episode 1 is we need a Wolverine family book. And we're getting it right now on Marvel Unlimited. So I just have to make a sell for this. If you have Marvel Unlimited, the Family Snikt, go read it. It's weekly right now. It's a fun little book. It's not what we envisioned when we say we want a Wolverine book, but it's free if you've got the Marvel Unlimited, and if you read it, there's more of a chance they'll do more with that family dynamic. So the Wolverine family Snikt.
Here's the thing they're on a road trip. Gabby gets them together to go on a road trip, and Akihiro does not want to be there. Laura's playing along, and Logan has decided when Gabby said, "Think about all the times we've hung out. Do we have any pleasant memories of not us being torn apart?" And so this is like the emotional hook of the book, right? And it's very good. Marvel Unlimited in general, the X-Men Infinity Unlimited stuff on Marvel Unlimited is very good.
I need to fill my gap there. You've convinced me because I skipped Green. I skipped a couple of the other.
Green was really good. That is on you for skipping Green. Green is like amazing. Green they put in trade. It was so good. It was the only one they've put in trade so far. But when often like us hardcore X-Men fans often have a character we love and we go, well, we wish we had the slice of life books, but between big stories and crossovers and whatever, we never get to see what like Jamie Madrox and Strong Guy do on their day off or whatever. This is what it does. Or the Resurrection Protocols when they go wrong. Like we had a story like that in Marvel Unlimited. Or an X-Men Unlimited. It's all there. So I really push for those. Right now they're doing a story of the Age of Apocalypse, but the Moira McTaggart of the Age of Apocalypse.
I need to go read that. I've heard really good things.
So like Professor X gets dumped into this area of like the Age of Apocalypse, but it's the timeline has been reset because the Moira of the Age of Apocalypse was killed in between, and so now it's like slightly different. It's very good. So go read X-Men Infinity. Go get Marvel Unlimited. $70 a year. It's worth it.
All right. Next week, Legion of X number 8. Which someday we need to have you on for Legion because that's the flip of today. I need to sell you on how good Legion actually is. And Dark Web X-Men number 1. So we'll go back into the web. All right. We need to give a huge thank you to Joe at Joe of X for being our second ever guest. You've thrown out your TikTok a few times. Do you have anything else you'd like to plug, sir?
I'm primarily on TikTok. Please go follow me on TikTok. I am still under 1,000 followers.
We need to get this guy to 1,000 so we can have him on live to banter like this, but about other things. Get him out of his wheelhouse of X-Men.
Oh yeah, I have tons of stuff too. Tons of Spider-Man ideas. And DC stuff. I'd love to be able to do lives about DC stuff. Just to counteract all the really shitty Batman takes you have on TikTok. Man, people really hate Batman.
My algorithm is skewing more Marvel now just because I need to try to avoid the toxic Batmans.
The fucking Batman people. The anti-Batman people are the worst. Anyway, Joe of X on TikTok. Joe Blauberg on Twitter. If you want to go see me talk about comic books on Twitter.
I'll spell that in the show notes for you.
It's so and that's me.
Awesome. So that will do it for us. As you probably know, we are now part of the Crossover Comics community. This means this episode and all future episodes will be found on their channel on YouTube. Crossover is also home to the Crossover Comics podcast hosted by our friends Jeremy and Michael, and Color Break hosted by Cody and Christian, which is going to have a certain Omega Mutant as a guest later this month, so you might check it out. Please go check them out. And if you are an audio fan, they're on all the services too. I assume you just search their name. Make sure you like us, review us on all the places, follow us, and if nothing else, tell a friend who you think might enjoy it. I'm That Nerdy Papa Bear on all the socials. Keegan is Bulk Ranger, and until next time, remember, never trust a clone. All right, so we just passed 240. So after editing,